describing Jack the Ripper as Aaron Kosminski. This was I guess, a Polish immigrant and a barber who was, I guess, one of the suspects, one of the prime suspects, but was never arrested. So, just give me sort of your general thoughts. I think, if memory serves, we've been down this road before in terms of, forensic experts claiming they've got DNA evidence linking, um, you know, Jack the Ripper to one person or another. What do you make of these claims, the most recent ones?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people listening are going to wonder why is Jack the Ripper, who was accused of these heinous murders in 1888, why is it making headlines in 2025? And it's exactly kind of what you just laid out. Is there is a British author and a researcher named Russell Edwards, and he got his hands on what he believes to be a shawl of one of the victims, a woman named Catherine Eddowes, and he got together with a doctor, and they
talking about Jack the Ripper over there on the radio. And I'm going to, looks like the stream has started, and I'm not even going to bother saving it to the other websites, social media sites. Boy, I got a lot of brightness on me this time, don't I? Okay, yeah, I was just thinking about that spot in Daniel. I always wanted to go to it. That talks about that he saw two, Daniel 12, and one was dressed in linen and was the one that did the talking to the other one. Uh, so I believe that since Daniel was before Jesus, you can see different aspects of Jesus in the way that things are described. But um, you see reference to Jesus, I think, earlier. I'm not doing justice to this transmission, but maybe even as early as Daniel 9, but it might be in 11 where you see Jesus being spoken of more, evidenced. And then, of course, with the, the archangel Michael having come to Daniel, and Michael being talked about in Revelation 12 as the one that was Jesus and the one that was Doe, the same soul, is evidence there. Um, and uh, and then there's evidence in Daniel that all this is taking place, also in Daniel 12, that after knowledge is increased. So that that's a pretty big clue that um, knowledge was significantly increased in the 18th and 19th, well, 19th century and 20th century. That's when knowledge was, in a way, increased. So that gives you a time frame that they're talking about, also as evidence. of course, there's so I've been wanting to share that for a while, and there's other things in Daniel as well. I didn't. It seemed like 9, 10, 11, and 12 was where the most significant information is that can be found in the Book of Revelations. Talked about, like that he's got feet of brass, and which has to do with the strength of his feet, his legs, and but also that whenever they use feet, they're talking about footstools a lot sometimes. Like in Revelation 12, feet is used um, by saying that uh, the moon is under her feet, under the woman's feet. And if you look up that word in the Greek, you can see that it represented a footstool. And what's a footstool in the next level but a uh, somebody that chooses to do the task for the woman, for the older member, of rising to the throne. That's what happens to them because of their choosing the task, uh, which is something that, um, birth to the throne is what happens to the man uh, during the time of Revelation 12 of the woman being depicted as the older member. And depicted in Daniel, the older member is depicted as wearing linen, which is the way that you'll see linen talked about in other parts of the book of Revelation. So it seems to me that there was consistency desired by the next level laboratory that was assigned to the aspect of the task of delivering clues to prophecy that would apply, and even apply a number of times in a number of ways, uh, and with at least one way that is beyond religion, beyond human science, and in accordance with human science. In my opinion, of course, and evidenced by T&O, beyond human science. And why is everybody going so slow here? It's a 65 zone. Oh, I'm going 70. Okay. Well, I'm not going 9 miles over, so I think I'm safe. But and there's another little evidence that the woman in Revelation 12 is the same soul that is the one that is depicted as wearing the linen in Daniel 12, being that only one of the two was wearing linen. So if Doe was the same soul that was in Jesus and was working with Michael because he was an archangel before he became advanced to the what was called the throne. In other words, um, well, I guess the chief administrator of the earth. Well, not the earth, but because that's T according to Doe. But maybe he advanced to that task, and T is going to move on to another task in terms of relating to this planet directly, like she did like T did, because T is not a she, but she used the female vehicle, which is the woman, and it's so interesting to watch, and I understand this I think completely from my own experience. Well, I shouldn't say completely. There's always more to understand, but uh, um, there's at least two things that are happening, I believe, simultaneously in the world. There's um, I think it gets harder to recognize um, T and Doe as the highest source of knowledge in our history since the beginning of this civilization. I think that gets harder and harder to hold on to. And I see it in myself, and I know it exists. I can't say how I know it, I just know it. Well, I mean, I do know how I know it. T and Doe talked about it. I just don't remember exactly where. But Doe talked about when he said that those that didn't leave with him, and he was speaking to those that were ready to leave with him, that were, uh, primarily, even though he wasn't locking the door out to someone that might be ready, even though that was going to be probably pretty rare, even though we don't know who might have left at that time on his offer. But it's clear to me that if individuals don't ask for help that had received a lot of help from them after they left, that they're basically, like I talked about in the last stream as well, they're basically getting cut off. I always wondered how the fallen angels got cut off. And I know Tino talked about it as having been a gradual experience after many opportunities. And I can see that, well, I'm an example of that, if you believe what they were teaching. And I had at least three opportunities that were clear to get back on track. And I didn't take them. I didn't want to take them. I wasn't interested at all. And I told that to Rick Cody on the phone, on the telephone, in those days before cell phones. But, well, not completely before cell phones. The people that had cell phones. I didn't, because that was like 1997, or maybe even the beginning of 1998. I think it was 97. But anyway, um, and then And then I see the way I was when I left. It's like I turned a different switch, and all of a sudden I was taking off from where I left off, in a sense, in my mind. And I went and got acquired musical instruments. I had a job, and I guess at least the one thing that I obtained that I kept with me, because it's my, I mean, maybe this could have been flushed out as well, but what I kept with me was feeling like I knew that T and No were exactly who they said they were, and I liked talking about them. I felt I learned so much that was real, that was true, that was um, perfect. I mean perfect, relatively perfect, because even T and Do don't think of things in a perfection way, except for levels of perfect that indicate a younger member getting closer to their older member in their thinking, in their mind, in their behaviors and ways. So, so where was I? Let's see. So the evidence of being the one in linen in Daniel 12, uh, which is the garb of a king, because in those days where they were depicting linen, that's a garment that's made to wear, made to be comfortable on the skin and things like that. Where the where the um, where the people that for whatever reason are poor, um, they are happy to have clothing made out of the burlap bags that the beans came in and the rice and whatever else they had in those days that was shipped around to eat or grown in that area, whatever it was. So that's why it says that they're coming in sackcloth. The two witnesses come in sackcloth. So in other words, ordinary clothing. They're not going to be wearing king's clothing. They're not going to be dressed in suits like you see in the kings of the earth, except for the king that is Mr. Zelensky, and the Arab kings, I guess, when they come to the United States, they continue to wear, not maybe not always. I was thinking of that Eddie Murphy movie where some king or prince, I guess, was dressed in a suit. And I know they can do that, and I don't know, I'm sure they do sometimes. Some of them, the kings of the Middle Eastern countries, Saudi Arabia, and so forth. Anyway, but so in Daniel 12, it's depicted as two on different sides of the river, and to me that's and one is on the same side of the river as Daniel is. So to me, that means that one is closer to Daniel than the one on the other side of the river. which I believe is the same one that was dressed in linen, is referring to T's mind. T, the older member of Do, who was on the same side of the river as Daniel. Closer to the human kingdom, which is the way that T and Do taught. But they didn't teach out of the Bible, so they didn't bring up any of this. So if some of it's coming together, it's because they demonstrated the things that are talked about in the Bible and illustrated in the Bible and figuratively spoken about in the Bible. In many places in the Bible. Because it's not the whole Bible. It's not, it's not the only thing we can count on that was kept true for our usage for the future are basically the red letters. But there's a lot of other materials that talk about those red letters, including the letters, from Peter and John and Paul and Jude and James and others. I don't know why the Gospel of Peter, I don't know why that wasn't included. But that might have been next level. That felt like what Peter wrote wasn't clear, and so they would have helped the people that were asking as they were doing it. And if they were monks, then they're automatically saying that they want to be in service to God. So the next level, I don't think would have. They wouldn't be they would be giving them opportunities to think the way that they know is more accurate to the translation of those words from whatever language they were translating from to begin with. And this is across multiple people that could be doing this. I mean, it should have been a team effort, but maybe it wasn't. I don't know exactly much about that. I know there was one monk that did most of the numbering system. Well, I feel like even the numbering system was designed in that way. And so isn't it interesting that Daniel 12 is talking about these two? And Revelation 12 is talking about these two? And Revelation 11 is talking about these two? With a focus on that they have students? Well, both, actually, 12 and 11 talk about the students. 12 talks about Michael and the archangel and his angels. Because an archangel is actually literally like a captain of angels. I don't know if Doe ever came upon that definition of archangel, but even if he did, he didn't necessarily, I don't know, I can't say what he didn't do in this regard, so I better shut my mouth, because that would be like making something up, like using my own mind to put it in there. Even though I'm using my own mind to talk about this, but I wanted to have direct references to things that T and Do taught and did. So anyway, Michael the archangel, like whether Doe used that term or not, because of that scripture in Revelation 12, I don't think it makes any difference. It's that he chose to describe himself as a captain. And while I'm at it, I might as well go into the other aspect of the word captain that I found fascinating. when I was writing my book, and that is that Mark Twain was actually, before as Samuel Clemens, um, was his career, I guess, or one of the things he did for money, I believe, was he was a riverboat captain on the Mississippi River. And anyway, and the other thing with Mark Twain is that it talks about in Revelation 12 is that John is told to measure the depth of the temple. Okay? Something like that. I forget exactly what it said, but I think that's what he was talking about because he said, leave the court alone. Only measure the depth of the temple. Well, the temple is whatever location a member of the next, someone is attempting to become a member of the next level. And so each vehicle would be the temple for each soul. And then when there's two or more gathered, then the temple is bigger. I think it would be one way to think about it. That temple space, even wherever they live, is bigger. And then because and it's all in degrees that we're talking about, I believe, in this. This may not be right. I'm not saying that it's right, but it makes sense to me. As much sense as I can see that anybody. I'm not saying that other people haven't seen things that I see, but I don't know. There's not many that I've seen so far because I actually read a lot of things while I was writing my book for 10 years that people were saying about these different scriptures. Anyway, some scriptures I didn't look for what they were talking about, and others I got stumped by, which happened many times. And so I'd go looking at what the commentaries were on that scripture. And, there's dozens and dozens of them, maybe even hundreds. I didn't look at that many, but I scanned a bunch. Anyway, and so I didn't see much. I mean, I saw things that made sense and I believe had their degree of accuracy, but I could see each time that there were parts to their understanding that they weren't talking about, that I knew, well, I felt like I could see. I can't say I know it because, we can, I think, grow to know certain things. But trusting that we know it is not a good habit to get into. Being very slow to trust that we know it. When it comes to human things, I should add, or human interpretations, or human religious scriptures. Boy. Anyway, maybe I'm just all out of whack here, but because I know I left a lot of open things here. But the Book of Revelation, uh, Well, look how Revelation 11 actually looks like it's two ones, right? Next to each other. And you can even see that 11 and 12 divide evenly, I think. Well, there might have been, I forgot now how many chapters there are. Doesn't matter. But you can look at stuff like that. And, I'm not somebody that believes in all the numerology things. TNO didn't talk about that as having much significance. So I don't give it much significance either. But I'm sure there's all kinds of patterns that the next level built into things. Musical scale, sevens and 12s. It's like they keep a theme going. And then we think of the number 7 as a lucky number, right? That's what I was taught when I would play dice with people. Shooting dice was something that you did when I was growing up. Uh, in the alleyway or whatever with your friends. But 7, 11, or a double. That's what you would try to get. And you have to repeat it. But if you got a 7, you won the pot right away. Or 11, or a double. So you had 3 chances in I don't know how many other combinations of, I guess more than 3, but whatever the odds are, I don't know. And then the other way you could win is by rolling a number and then rolling it again. And people would gamble on whether you would get it when you rolled it again. You only get one shot. And then if you don't get it, then you lose the dice. I think that's how you played it. Okay, so let's see, what holes did I leave? Because, it keeps on going and going to where, so Daniel in Daniel 12 represents a potential younger member of the next level, I believe. In other words, there was probably a soul doing that task that would be the type of task that could help them grow towards becoming a captain of angels. Not that they want to be a leader of others. That's the human way. A member of the next level doesn't want to lead anybody. They really don't. It's uncomfortable for them to lead somebody. I'm not sure I'm expressing it right, but I believe Tiendo did express this. That this isn't a natural task for them to want to do. They do it because it works. I mean, they take human vehicles because it works. And then they do end up leading souls that take those human vehicles. But those souls have to prove that they want that leading over and over and over and over again, day by day, week by week, month by month. And the students don't necessarily know that. They know it in a general sense, but they don't know it in detail. So they don't know what lesson is coming up next. I don't think any of the students really knew, unless the next level gave them some clue. It's possible. But I think whenever Tiendo came to us with a lesson, if you would have asked, if they would have asked the students, what do you think we're going to talk about? I mean, to me, that could be an experiment. They might have done that once or twice, come to think of it. But there was no way we were going to come up with it. I mean, except in a general way, potentially. You know, but you can see Doe the way he asks questions in the audio tapes, that he doesn't just go along with somebody, what they say. In fact, see, he's not attached to his students being students of his. He doesn't need anybody to be a student. That's part of what I'm saying. Because his relationship is with his older member. And his older member, Jesus illustrated this by saying, my father, I kept all the ones that my father gave me, except for one, and that was the son of perdition. Which, I don't know what that meant exactly. Because I don't know that he thought poorly. Well, Doe clarified that Judas wasn't, he loved his older member so much that he would do anything for his older member. And even setting his older member up to be caught and killed. And then he laid down his vehicle right after that. Because even though he was doing a task for his older member, it was still tremendously difficult for him to see his older member treated that way. At least that's what I think Doe was talking about. In some ways, I might have put a little bit of too much of my own opinion in descriptions there, but I think they're in the ballpark. So what else? Well, like I was saying, students we're talking about, we're talking about that there's students depicted with Daniel, and there were others that were supposedly weren't there 4 individuals that were thrown into the fiery furnace with Daniel? Or maybe only him. I don't remember now. But and you see the 4 living beings depicted in the early Revelation 4 and 5, I think, and also talked about in Revelation 11. They even talked about us laying down their bodies. The ones that were thrown down, which he talks about in, which might have been referring to being the same ones that are depicted in, I think, Revelation 4 as the 24 elders. And Kathy and I were listening to that last tape that is still being talked about in my notes there. I forgot the number of right now. 256? No, 254 maybe? Anyway, where Doe refers to 24 students that were in Northcraft at the time. So, because the river is the human kingdom in Daniel 12, I believe. The entire human kingdom. And Daniel is standing outside that river instead of in it. And it's even interesting that the one that's standing on the same side of the river as Daniel has the river in between them and the one that is wearing linen. Well, is the other one that's not on the same side of the river as Daniel is. That would be like saying that what's between them being one is the human kingdom. That's the pathway. That's the direction the soul has to take in order to build their minds into minds that are compatible and viable to exist in a next level, to take over and use a next level grown vehicle that requires a strength of mind to use. Strength of mind that humans don't have, because it's not strength of mind by what they remember and what they get good at in the human kingdom. It's strength of mind from what they get out of from the human kingdom, what they separate from the human kingdom. So that's why we're all dead to the next level, if we don't have enough life in us for the next level to consider that that life can grow to produce fruit. In other words, perform services. Because if we're not performing services, then they have no use for us. They don't have dead weight. That's why I can't help but feel, not justifying the way it's being done, but if you're getting rid of, I mean, if it was me that was losing my job, would I be upset? Yeah, I guess I'd be upset unless in my mind I already felt like I started to talk about this the other night. That because of what happened on September with the 2 digits, I still don't want to say it because of the YouTube engines that continue to crawl through my things and find things that they can use to have me remove my video or just remove it and have no recourse to put it back, which I've had done 3 or 4 times, I think now. Anyway, but TNO were against getting into debt. They were against doing things beyond your means. And yet that became the rule for the United States government and probably many governments in the world. Because if you don't have to do what's in your means, you can use it for anything you want. And the things are coming out like crazy. There's some potential, real. I mean, this has got to be like, it's a war. The war in Armageddon isn't just a war. I mean, it's a war for souls, but it also translates in war between vehicles and between the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls, I believe. Well, I know it is. They don't necessarily get along. Like I've talked about in previous streams, based on things that T and Doug both said. That you'll hear these things and you'll read them in the material, but it's like everything, it's, how many times I've read Daniel 12? Well, not that many, but maybe 10 or 12 times, okay? I'm just going to say that off the top of my head. Okay, and tonight I've gone through a number of things related to it that I can find evidence of in the book of Revelation, talking about the same period of time and even the same depiction of that I didn't see at the time when I read it all those other times. Because people are not ready all at the same time and in the same way and in the same depth. It's meant to be that way. There's grades in school, and we can accelerate. We can be very excelled in some grades in school to where we've got a skill that will, if we keep it up, will find us in good stead as a potential member of the next level in the future. Okay, and but then there's going to be some things that we don't learn as quickly because the learning pace is a pace, and it is trial and error kind of thing. It's learning what doesn't work and learning what does work, and even learning to recognize the source of what works and the degree of recognizing the source of what works when you put things into motion. Now, vehicles buck this. They buck it all. This is not profitable for a human vehicle to be thinking in the ways that teens don't think. That's why humans can't even abide by the death penalty. I mean, abide by the primitive lesson of humans shouldn't kill other humans. Don't kill other humans. They didn't say it that way because they were talking to the students. The students were being given the lesson by the older member. So to say that thou shalt not kill, if you want to play that out, does that mean insects? You know, some people say that it's vague. No, they're talking about humans. That's very plain sense, unless you don't want to believe it because you're so mad at the person that did something to you or others that took their lives or hurt them in some way, which is understandable that somebody would have that response of wanting to do away with somebody that did such a heinous act. But to demonstrate the next level of mind, even though this isn't talking about self-defense really, but to have the belief and the attitude of trying to be keen to where you're not in a situation to where you'd have to choose to kill somebody else. And I can't, prove that individuals can stay out of those kind of situations, except by those who feel like they've had that help, so that they didn't go down a certain road. They didn't walk down a certain road at a certain time of night. Or if they did, they might have had some help from the next level, or spirits, or even the space aliens, if they had an interest in that vehicle for some reason. Like if that vehicle got deposited a soul body into, the beginnings of a soul body, the seed of a soul body, the way that Jesus talked about it, as a seed. All the seeds don't grow, but that's what the New Age Christians like to believe. Some of them is that everybody's the same, and nobody's any better than anybody else. And see, what's wrong with that is that there are some that are better than others. There are many that are better than others. But there's more numbers of bad. according to Tiendo. But there's more goodness because of the amount of goodness that fewer have within them. And that's regardless of what they believe, but it can include big time how much goodness the ones that graduated had. It's not the same for everybody. We're all potentially prepared for what we get. The kind of bombardment that we get, I believe we can all handle. But that doesn't mean we're going to choose to handle it. It doesn't mean when we're going to choose to handle it. And it doesn't mean to what degree we're going to choose to handle it. And if we do handle it, whether we're going to consistently handle it and even handle it better and better. I know that probably sounds like all the same thing, but I think those are all like facets of what the process that Tiendo were teaching of overcoming the human kingdom entails. Because regardless of how much, well, I shouldn't say regardless of, but there is a difference between well, the combination of what we're up against and what our vehicle has been programmed with in relationship to how much next level mind we bring into our consciousness and how much of that consciousness we apply. Not trying to put like a weight on every little characteristic because one person may have a huge challenge with well, let's say sexuality, but another person may have a huge challenge with being deceitful and not have any challenge with sexuality. And another person may have a huge challenge with following procedures. I think that covers the three different categories of I have to go read it again, the major offenses. But I'm just saying, I mean, there's some people that, you know, want what other people have, right? I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong about that, except to the degree that we want it so much that certainly if we stole it from them, that would be a bad thing to do. When you're stealing from a person, I think that's but I don't think stealing in general is a good thing ever. But there are differences between, like for instance, um, how you work your how you write your tax return. You know, and maybe you take a little bit more than you technically can prove of expenses if you're doing like an itemized tax return. I might be wrong about this. I don't, or if you don't follow the speed limit 100%. I don't think that goes against you in the next level's mind. So, certainly can be nonsensical to drive too fast at times. So let's see, Daniel 12. That's what I've been talking about. And relating it to Revelation 12 and other places. I'm almost at my destination. It's 11 miles before I turn off. And I'm not going to get to the chat at all tonight. I'm sorry. I'll go look at it later or tomorrow. And if I see anything to respond to, I'll either do it in the next stream or I'll leave you a message if I can. I still don't know how to leave somebody a message. Well, maybe I do in YouTube. Yeah, I do, I think. Okay, folks, I'm going to bring it down so I can turn off my power supply, reserve it for another time because it's starting to get weaker. It doesn't keep the charge as long. And I've said about all I think I can say. I'm kind of tired. So good night, folks.